We'll get started. This is what you have up here on the board is kind of a typical small talisman that one might make, sometimes called a charm. Be written out on paper, and it says, "Beneath thy guardianship, I am safe against all tempests and enemies. JJJ." Well, who's JJJ?
Jesus, John, James, Jesus, James, John.
Any other takers?
Joshua.
Joshua.
Any other takers on what it might be? Well, J could be what?
I.
Could be an I. For an I, what could it be?
Another representation of Yod.
Yod. Yod. What do 3 yods represent? 30. It's the Holy Trinity. See how easy it would be to... Why is it J? Does anyone tell me?
Because of the Latin change in alphabet.
I and J are the same.
I and J are the same.
And then this would have been out of German, Jehovah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay? Now I have little quotation marks around it. Someone said, "What's that?" Quotation mark. I just put it up there just to confuse you. Because you can always say, "Oh, I want to write this down and I want to get it right." So I look at every mark that's on there, so I better put those marks. Because that's there, I better put them down, right?
Mm-hmm.
I just put them there to make you do that. So you could understand part of the problems and the procedures in what goes on when you transmit information from one generation to another. And that just means from one person to another without modern technology. If you don't know what JJJ means, you may mistake it for something else, right? And it doesn't necessarily mean it's horrible if you think it means James, Jesus, or whatever. Not horrible, but that's not what it means. And why is Yod also used? What is Yod? Those are the little tongues of fire, right? And the first letter of the Tetragrammaton. Now, the amulet which you have, and the long one which I've asked you to write out, was one which one of my great aunts carried. It was in her wallet. Oh, this is a nice one. There's so many of them. We haven't even scratched the surface in the last day. We have not even scratched the surface. There's so many things we need to try and cram into the next few hours. And the paper reads, now remember, I wrote it out, and I put it over there, and I said, hey, make yourselves useful and write this down. And as soon as you're done, pass your written copy on to someone else. So what?
It might be translated incorrectly.
So they can copy it, right? Yeah. The front of this is on 2 sides of a piece of paper, front side, back side. And it reads, an amulet to carry on your person. Carry these words with you, and no one will be able to assail you. Now I've printed in block letters, Ajania, Azaria, Mizael. Agania, comma, Azaria, comma, Misael, comma, period. Misael, period. Now, of these 3, what do you think they are? Right. Why do you guess that? Yeah, the EL is the only thing that gives it away. Figure they're angels. And if you go to look these up, you'll only be able to find Misael. You will find parts and pieces of the previous two. Meaning what?
They have different names, or they were transcribed.
There's a transcription error. There's a transcription error. Okay? Now you'll find pieces of them. You'll have the roots of them. That's just what happens. But you still write it out as it is. Okay? Praise ye the Lord, for he has kept us from hell and rescued us from death and preserved us in fire. What is that reference to? Preserved us in fire. What is that in reference to?
Kept us in spirit.
Holy Spirit?
No.
Michael?
No. No. You're thinking too much. This is Sunday school.
Oh.
No.
And the light.
Boy
Baptism.
Scout.
Oh, anointing.
No. Sunday school.
Sundays?
Old Testament.
Desert.
Nebuchadnezzar. They threw the three men into the fiery furnace, and I saw a fourth walk amongst them with the brilliance of the sun.
Okay.
Therefore, notice it has a semicolon there rather than a comma. Probably a transcription error. Therefore, may the Lord present the fire against us, from whom adversities, and then it's N.R., Prince of Peace, and all manner of contention, power his protection for all who carry this blessing with them. That is awkward, is it not? Yes. You write it out as it is. It is probably a translation error.
What adversities? Whom adversities, I think he said. Mark?
The Lord present the fire against us from adversities.
Adversities, no.
From adversities, not
from
from-
it.
Now, present is actually protect us. Okay? The Lord protect the fire against us from adversities.
Should we change that?
No.
Okay.
Prince of Peace and all manner of contention. Power his protection for all who carry this blessing with them.
Is NR from the Latin letters?
N.R. That's my guess. That's often what I've seen it. But it's just dropped in there. So my thing is, N.R. Nazareth Rex, probably. Okay.
Is it man or manners?
All manner.
Manner.
All manner of contention. The contention, the reading is that the very thing is turned against itself. The very thing is turned against itself. Backside. They will possess a grand secret. Grand and secret are both uppercase, which no other being understood. Christ is in the midst of peace, went with his disciples. Now, is in. I purposely put that in there because in the original, the last letter was very slurred. And I made a note to myself to check to see if that was an S or an N. And if you were to read that, which would make more sense? Right. In the midst of peace. Right. So make your correction there. Make your notation so that should be in the midst of peace. Went with his disciples abroad. St. Matthew, St. Mark, St. Luke, and St. John. That's right, St. Luke.
So we take out is.
Right. Christ in the midst of peace went with his disciples abroad. St. Matthew, St. Mark, St. Luke, and St. John. Always going to be those four. The four evangelists, protect me. And here you put name of a person if it's someone else. Many people also put their own name there. So you would say, the four evangelists protect me, John. Okay, sometimes it was even written more strangely because of the maternal line. It would always be, say like, protect me, Frank, the son of Barbara. You hear it? Mm-hmm. Okay? Comma. The ever-praised majesty and unity of God. J, period, J, period, J, period, amen. Then beneath it, quote, dot, with me at all distances, period, amen, period, quotation. Then you have three things beneath it. 3 dots, 3 J's, 3 yods. Now I put that there because on the original, it was 3 dots. But I put that in my notebook as a reminder to me to tell you that whenever you see those 3 dots, it's also the same as 3 J's, which also is the same as 3 yods. You understand?
Yes.
So get rid of the J's and the yods if you don't want to use them. The 3 dots are on the original. Or make a note on your paper that the 3 dots are the original. You would just have one of them, not all 3 of them. You don't need to write anything. Just write it over. Now, you see how easy it is to make a mistake. You get it? You really want to bring that home. Because we do a lot of work, and we have taken it for granted that someone's going to hand us a photocopy or send us a PDF. Okay? That just wasn't what was done. And just a simple slip of the pen, and somebody's writing something else down. Is it is or is it in? You know? My notes to myself suddenly become, for you, part of the package. You know? My marginella suddenly gets incorporated into the whole thing. So we have to have a bit of sympathy when we think about the earlier transcriptionists in the burden that was placed upon them. Okay? Now, again, this is just one of many, many kinds of amulets that would be made. As you can see, they were different. They weren't the big symbolic amulets that we think of, or talismans that we think of as ceremony of magic. These were written. These were words. Okay? Sections of Scripture are said to be holy in and of themselves. Why? Why?
They were the words of God.
That's right. So the Bible was looked upon as a magical book itself. If you open up some modern books on Buddhism or Kabbalah, such as by Kaplan, you'll notice a little statement in the beginning of the book. And it says, this book contains sacred images or sacred text. Don't read it in the bathroom. Why is that?
Because you're supposed to be clean when you touch the Word of God.
That's right.
So you should wash your hands.
That's right.
Open your Bible.
That's not.
There's a feng shui reference for that as well, which is anything you don't want, you wash away.
That is right.
So it's an old technique. We've talked about that before. Any bad correspondence, anything that we don't want, what do we do with it? Put it on the back of the toilet, on the tank, and every time you're flushing the toilet, you're draining that energy out. So if you're reading it while you're doing your business and whatever you're getting rid of there, that energy, that water will, we know water, we've already talked about it already, water really condenses and holds that ethereal charge. So you're doing that, you're charging yourself up, but the water, that cold water is pulling it down, and when you flush, it's draining it away from you. So you don't want that to be the case.
It's a distinct sense of a lack of sacredness. You know, the notion of cleanliness or ritual cleanliness is important in the beginning of all work. Later on, you know, you have some room for wiggle room. But you don't get that wiggle room in the beginning, because you have to begin to understand the nature of physical and ritual and psychological cleanliness and how they all work together, how they overlap. Remember, we said everything was what? Thought, word, and deed. So,
Can I ask one more question
Yes,
about
you
the animals
Yes, you
before we move on? So you actually write on the front side of the paper an amulet to carry on your person, so you're writing the instructions on each one that you make?
no.
Okay.
No. Very good question, though. Mm-hmm. And you just write what the front side of the paper is what you write. The material that says on the front side. You don't write on the front side or amulet to carry on your person. Now you could. What might have happened is you might say to someone just to remind them because they're a little dense. You know, an amulet to carry on your person is you send it to them in the mail to remind them. And then what will happen is someone will pick that up. That will now become part of it, I say.
The other thing with that is, and I've done this in the past, is use the same one for an act of charity, which is I spend a lot of time, I make up a really nice one, I tie it off, and then I leave it someplace discreet for someone, whoever needs it, to find it.
In the
And they pick it up and they read it, they open it. If they're so inclined to see that it says an amulet to carry on your person for protection.
drop it off at the local laundromat.
Exactly.
So it officially starts with the angelic names.
It officially starts with a paragraph that says,
Carry these words.
Carry these words with you.
carry these words with you.
So when you said that transcription errors should be left,
This part where it says front side, amulet for protection, you don't need to write that out. Front side reads, you don't need to write that out. You just start with an amulet to carry on your person.
Yes, we do like that.
You do write that.
Right, I was saying this part up here. That's
The first manual to carry on the
Yeah,
person.
amulet for protection, you don't need to write that out. You read the paragraph, you write this whole paragraph out. All of
Oh,
this.
so that is on there.
So you
Right,
do-
I was referring to this part up here when you asked the
I was
question.
saying you write right.
This whole thing here is written out. This is all written out. All of this. But where it says front side, back side, that's just directions.
Particular shape.
No. If we had time, I might show you how to do the triangular ones. The reduction talismans. Now, with this, so write that out, carry it on your person, make it nice, and there you have it. Give them it as Christmas gifts or something, whatever you like. The other one is simple, as we had mentioned, but the important part that we also have is everything is what we say, thought, word, and deed. And prior to any significant magical act, I don't like the word magic, by the way. I really don't. We need to realize that there's 3, sometimes 4 principal areas that need to be understood in preparation. And this is part of the notion of purity, of cleansing, of getting rid of, which we fall under the general heading of exorcism, of getting rid of things from ourselves. And we do that through prayer, fasting, and alms. Those are the 3. Prayer, fasting, and alms. A 4th one is sometimes added, which is confession. And confession needs to be done verbally, out loud, not simply to yourself. And ideally, it has to be done to another person. So those of you who come from a Catholic background are vaguely familiar with this notion of confession. If you're not Catholic, then you can say your confession to someone else. And if not, you just have to say it out loud. And it has to be a sincere statement regarding where you have erred, where you have done wrong, and the statement that you will not do it again. It's really that simple. Don't be sorry. Don't do it.
In the days past, when the days of the fathers that wrote the grimoires, I mean, they weren't all in towns probably where there were multitudes of clergy. So
It's just maybe one guy.
Yeah.
1 or 2 guys. And again, as I stated to you last night, and some other folks said in those days, the notion of seminary didn't occur until after the Protestant Reformation. That was a response to the Protestant Reformation. Being a priest up until then was an apprenticeship. You apprenticed to whoever the local priest or 1 or 2 might be, and you learned from them. So it was an apprenticeship relationship. That's how you learn liturgy. That's how you learn the rules of the day. That's how you learn to read. But the notion is that you actually recognize, it's one thing to say, nobody's perfect. We all make mistakes. Well, that's true. But what's your point? It's important to recognize where you have made a mistake and not to do it again. And sometimes those are big ones. Sometimes they're just subtle ones. As we go further and further on the path, the big ones get ground down. They get sanded off. But the small ones remain. And those are the ones that trip you up like a pea in your shoe. It's very amazing how the small ones can do the worst damage. So we always have to constantly, it's okay, it's just part of the human condition, as we said, We recognize it, and we say, okay, I won't say or do that again. And at some point, it's I won't think that again. How do we not think it? It's when it comes up, we simply let it go. Rather than cling on to it and make big deals out of it and drive ourselves nuts. Okay. But prayer and fasting and alms. And there was a time before anyone, took the Eucharist that they fasted. The Orthodox still do that. I don't know if the Catholics do it, but the Orthodox do. And some of the old Lutherans used to. And it's very good to fast, to give your body a rest. And to deprive it a bit, because then you just get to see how habituated you are to things. Alms, of course, is generosity, to get rid of your stinginess and greediness and selfishness. It's very important to undertake these. Very simple, very straightforward, very important. Now, I don't have time to go over as much as I like. There are many things unsaid. So, does anyone have any questions on anything that we did yesterday? Yes.
So I'm not sure, the clock thing we did, is that what your aunt carried in her pocket?
No.
No. Oh, this thing.
Yeah.
Okay. That's a prayer flag that we made.
More or less. We can call them flags. They didn't have a name for them. You just write them on these things and tie them. They didn't have a formal name for it.
And you hang it on a tree.
Yeah. They used to have a special tree, like, you know what a local holy tree was. I've seen them just put outside buildings. I've seen them tacked on. You know, biggest place I used to see them tacked, probably just like to keep the birds away when they plant, you know. On the tomato stakes, I've seen them. And you go up and there's little stuff written on them.
Oh, yeah.
And they're written in pencil, you know.
Yeah.
Well, it's Tibet, but they formalize the practice. They formalize the whole practice in a way. Okay. This practice probably, I would say, probably thinned out somewhere after the 12th century. You know? I mean, it didn't really, because you'd always see stuff like this tied to flags or tied to banners. You know, it holds over, but the common practice you probably see a lot. Now, we talked about trapping negative energy in jars. We talked about getting rid of it with, or keeping it out with salt. We've talked about getting rid of it with blessings and prayers, extracting it with an egg, how to take care of that egg after you've gotten rid of it to keep, because we believe contagion plays a role here. We've talked about offerings and how they're...
Demonstrate how you wave the egg over the body.
You rub it.
What motions?
Always, it's always very simple. It's always from top to bottom, from inside to out. So always top to bottom, inside, out. Always that way, because you're moving it out the extremities. The idea is that the energy flows out the arms, the feet, and you want to move it down.
You're doing that with the egg itself?
Yes, physically, yes.
Physically, okay.
You physically touch them with it.
Physically?
Yes.
Okay.
And you may hold it there too. And you might even hold it there and move it around. You know, kind of just develop a little rhythmic sensation there. Part of it is you have to develop your own natural style with some of this. That's where we're dealing with principles rather than formula.
The egg usually comes out of the fridge. You let it sit to get room temperature.
Yeah, I would. The other thing is, that said though, there is an advantage of using a cold one.
You're attracted to the cold.
Yeah, that is an advantage. You're going to have to make the call on that.
Depends on the individual.
That's right. Yeah, it has to. You don't want the experience to be a negative one for them because they need to relax. You know, so if you have a cold one, you might even explain to them, this is really good. This is a cold one. And take it out of their fridge if they have it. You know, if you're at the house or something. It's a lot to get them to buy in. You have to get them to buy in. Okay, it's very important.
And then you wrap it in the red and
Black, yeah. After you're done.
red and black what?
Either thread or yarn. I've seen yarn because it's probably easier for the older people.
You completely cover it? You completely cover it?
I just wrap it around it. I don't completely cover it because it falls off. I just create like a band and tie.
It's a binding.
A binding.
Just a binding.
Yeah.
It's just a binding.
Like a belt around it. I've seen it done where they actually have the black and the red intertwined.
Yeah.
Where it's black, where it's red and black, or they're black and red intertwined. Okay. Yeah. Again,
You use both colors.
yeah, you always use both. We also went over.
You bury it immediately.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, don't.
Don't let it get mixed up with your other egg.
Yeah, don't stop. That's probably why they just wrapped it up anyhow. Let's not make an omelet out of this one. Well, good luck with that.
Do the heat.
I would say you do the heat thing, do the fire thing. What do you do if the ground is frozen?
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Good luck with that seed in the spring. Yes. Anything else?
When the ground is frozen, I flowing river.
Yeah, you can throw them in the river, but
That's not what I wanted to ask you.
Yeah.
Okay, so about putting the energy in the jar, are you talking about wiping your hand on the jar if you feel there's a lot of energy? Or are you talking about something that you think is in the room?
something in the room.
Well, how do you get something in the room to go into the jar?
Yeah, if it's that condensed where you can feel it in this part of the room and not this one, you can,
I think she's saying, what's the bait?
Where's the bait?
Where's the bait?
Yeah, actually in the
You
jar.
put M&Ms in the bottom of the jar?
I mean, I can only tell you.
Piece of rotted meat.
I'm guessing it's the same principle. I mean, this is a classic Taoist technique for, they do the jar trapping thing a lot. So it's they'll use a talisman. They'll write out a talisman. It's a perfect, just like any talisman. Remember, it's holding the vibration of that thing. So like attracts to like. They take that talisman and they put it in the jar.
Mm-hmm.
And so whatever the energy is attracted to that talisman, just like instead of calling it down from whatever and putting it into your talisman here, you just leave it there, and be as neutral as possible, and it's going to be attracted to that talisman once, you feel that the shift has changed, and you're just capping it off, sealing it again, and you just seal that.
Because they're going to gravitate to the energy.
They're going to go to the thing that's the most comfortable body for them.
Yeah, and they throw salt in the jar though too and cap it,
Right.
or have salt. Some people have salt ahead of time, which of course is kind of pushing it because they don't like the salt, so it's kind of pushing it out. And if they end up catching it, it's kind of like me chasing you with a net. You're going to run away from me because I have a net. But if I end up catching you, you're not going to like it. You understand? So they'll put salt in the jar, and they'll say, the idea is this is a threat, basically. If you continue to stay here and bother us, this is where you're going to end up. You're going to be in the timeout room.
Mm-hmm. Right.
This is their version of the brass box.
Do you remember, the younger ones aren't going to remember this, but Chitty Chitty Bang Bang?
Yes.
Remember the child catcher?
Yes.
That's it. That's what you're doing here.
That's it. It's, treacle towers, all free today. And then into the place with all the sweets, and then boom, boom.
Boom, you're caught.
So Swiss chocolate.
Hey, if you got something that likes Swiss chocolate, it's probably your friend.
Yeah, it's not going to be a boogeyman. So this goes back to something that I was thinking about. You would need to know what's in here in order to make the proper talisman, or do you use a generic?
You can, but you can get a generic one. You can figure out a generic one. I mean, because you're not always going to know exactly what it is, unless say you did, or this is the difference between your work and client work. You go to a client that says, "Oh crap, I did this thing, I did this ritual, I found this book, blah blah blah. I invoked this thing or evoked this thing, and now my life is shit and everything's going on and you get in there and you feel, what it is. First, I always ask them what it is. What did they do? And then if it's that, then I'm making a talisman for that. At the right time and using that as a basically it's not that comfortable there anyway. But the idea is that I want to make a channel or a portal back to where its home is. Remember, think about our normal everyday, when we do not cut and run, but our normal everyday license to depart, right? Peace between you and us. Go back to where you live normally.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a portal. It's a place to send them back. It's not my job to torture the hell out of them. Okay, my job is to get that there and then remove it to a place where it can, be out of that person's life and surroundings and get it back where it is. Again, it's an act of compassion. It's not an act of war.
And that's really important because generally when with this school is this notion which I taught you was to put salt in the jar and kind of go after the thing, and that's like I said, it's like chasing it with a net. It's probably going to run away, and if you catch it, then it was too slow, or you've got a problem. And you had a problem to begin with. Now you just have a different type of problem. So usually it'll go, but the notion is you're not going to. This is not old school. You're not slugging it out.
It's me. Don't worry.
Okay. You're not slugging it out. That's not the purpose here. Something that we didn't do, but do you have those bottles?
Yeah.
Yeah, great. We're going to hand them out. We have some glass bottles here. I like them. They're nice. Mike was very generous to help empty them. And,
All right.
I want to say,
Healing bottles,
Just know I did it for you.
that's right. Thank you.
Act of compassion for you. It's all
That was-
about you.
That's right. Thank you so much. And of course, Sue was very kind to at least get the major labels off. You have to figure out the rest yourself. We're going to hand these out. That way it's our version of recycling. And this is a strange little piece known as a witch bottle that I have guys telling me they find them stuck up chimneys in Appalachia, you know.
Oh, I've seen
And they're pretty common. And they found a few recently in old houses in England.
Oh, yeah.
And they're in the chimney.
In Tennessee, they bury them in the ground.
Yeah.
The enemy.
Yeah, yeah. Well, what they do is they fill them with all sorts of shiny and sharp and nasty things. And the idea is that, I guess, and again, remember, the notion is that this energy, because it is air-like, as it begins to condense and vaporize and be more congealed, it also has limits.
Oh, there's your beer. That's why I was an active
It's only colors though, but we're gonna have to share.
I figured I like the green. It's a nice color, right?
The green is a nice color.
Color of energy, color of the channels, right? So it's so as this energy condenses and becomes more, yeah, as it becomes more material, it can no longer simply pass through material things as it once could. You understand? So then it seeks an opening. And of course, where's the greatest opening in your house? Well, you know, it would have been your chimney at one point. So our vaporous ghosts enter through your chimney because you've salted your windows so well. We won't go through there. And there they would stick them. And they would put them there to keep them away. And they're filled with all sorts of, you know, broken glass, sharp rocks, nails.
iron nails.
Yeah. Every nails will drop one in each for them.
Oh, yeah.
And they can arm wrestle for who gets to take it home. Then just give the others a nail. Those who don't get it,
Just give you a nail.
just get a nail.
It's no problem.
And the old iron ones are my favorite, but of course anything will do. And of course, why? We say spirits don't like iron. You see that in the Orient too. The notion is they don't like iron because it cuts and it disperses. Okay? Because if you're trying to, think of it this way. If you have smoke and a lot of it, and it's just going all over the place, and you've decided that you've got two big fans, like in your hand, like your Oriental fans, and you're going to try and congeal this smoke. You think I'm being metaphorical here, I mean literal. Okay? And you're going to try and congeal this smoke. What's the last thing you want? Is you want someone else coming in and waving something else around, right? Because there comes a point when the energy densifies. There comes a point when the tangibility takes place. We talked about this light or this energy being, and I read you that quote that said, you know, the spiritus mundi, this etheric energy, and I think this energy that fills the world, that fills all creation, can be made tangible and visible, even though it is invisible. You've all seen it. You've seen, think of the auras that you've seen, or the psychic phenomena. And some of the, I don't know, some of the work that you've done with Brian, I don't know a lot of it. I only know what's related to what he and I go over. But I know I was years ago in lodge rooms where, you know, that would be one of the demonstrations that would be done. You know, is we're turning on the lights, okay, to show that this is real. And part of that demonstration, too, is also, I was involved in it years ago. It had not been done in that lodge in probably 70 years.
Oh, thanks.
And did you count them out? Did you count them out?
Yeah.
Oh, get 3 more. So, yeah, please. Thank you. Did you pay attention there?
That was magic. 3 minutes later.
Okay, up here, guys. Up here. Okay, pay attention now. So I was I was asked to do a particular class, and in that class, what we had to do is work with was the actual manipulation of this energy, okay, in a tangible way. And the first thing that begins to form is lights. And those lights move in a kind of a spiral pattern. And then you begin to see a slight fog. The color varies, but it's usually kind of like a gray, bluish gray. And it's thin like cigarette smoke. And at that point, it usually disperses. Okay? And then, using a great deal of effort, not too much, but just enough, you have to begin to extract it from the surrounding environment and condense it and make it spin so that it becomes dense. Most people don't get that far. But what they may get is they may get a very distinct sense of a location in front of them or in the room. Meaning that there may not be the visible phenomena, but there's a somatic phenomenon. Remember, we all process this differently, okay? Mm-hmm. So even working with the somatic phenomena, which is probably more deeply rooted to the unconscious, you'd still continue. When that energy is made dense enough, and there's specific directions you go in and specific things you do, we will not be going over that today. You actually have now a tangible location in the room that, there is something there. Now, if someone's really good, they can actually create stuff. It's like a hologram. Most of the time, what you've just done is you've created kind of a nice portal for different kind of psychic projections or attunements or that kind of thing. But it is a very dense phenomenon. And if not captured, if you have a means of capturing it, you can hold on to that for a while. If not, it will disperse naturally. That dispersal process is very common. So these beings are always, especially these we'll say demonic ones, are on a constant state of dispersal. They're very chaotic. They're trying to create a center, but they don't want a center. They're very conflicted. So that's why you can get rid of them that way. And but that is that extraction of the energy, as I talk in this practice experiment, if you will, is from the immediate environment. Now that's why when you feel cold spots, it's because the energy is extracted from the immediate environment. And sometimes you'll feel cold spots for reasons that you just don't know. I remember years ago, I was doing healing on a friend of mine. He had asked for it. I said, well, yeah, sure, why not? And the temperature must have dropped about 15 degrees. I can't tell you why. I have no idea why. Okay? I said, well, that's not good. I said, let's stop and we'll come back to this. So, when you get those cold spots, if they're a physical place, building that doesn't go away, then you've got a slightly different problem. But if you were feeling them occasionally, particularly around people, or if they're feeling them on occasion around rooms, like they go into this room and it feels cold, or it's just that place right there, localized. And that's what we're talking about. And that's because something is pulling energy from the environment.
So what did you do about it?
Well, that, I just said we stopped it and went away. It never reoccurred, so there wasn't a problem. Now, on the other hand, I had a friend at about the same time who was involved in a variety of magical practices because he wanted to have some familiars to help him out. He was visiting once. And I said to my very young and not so very young and charming and often all too stupid friend, it's really not too good of an idea. Why don't you get rid of them? Just get rid of them. And that night, they had paid me a visit. And so I get up out of my bed and I walk into my living room. And there they are, these three entities. Now, the appearance is not so much one of as if I'm looking at you. The appearance as if I am looking in your direction, and a very ever so faint, again, hologram of you is there. You understand? Mm-hmm. I can look through you, but you're still there. Or some shadowy essence of you is there. And there were three of them. And I said, this is very interesting. And told them it was time to leave now. They didn't like that. Explained to them it was time to leave now. They didn't like it. When they don't like it, what they try to do is to scare you. And to say trying to scare you is polite. They do. You don't have to do anything because they're raw emotion. Let's talk about that in a second. So, I said, okay, we'll play that game. And I remembered some mantras, for lack of a better term, some words that my great uncle had taught me years earlier. And promptly they disappeared. They left very quickly. I then told my friend the next morning, I said, now I suggested to you to get rid of these guys. And I described to him what they were like. Their sizes and unique personality characteristics. Because remember, it's an emanation. It's a vibration. So you pick up the information very quickly. It's not like you have to do an interview. Okay? And in your daily life, there's some people who just present who they are. They're not hiding anything. And that can be wonderful too. And in the beginning what you're doing. It's the same way with these things often. And he was a little surprised. He apologized. He said, well, apologies, don't apologize. Just get rid of them and don't do it again. But he was surprised that I actually could describe their size and shape, their hierarchical relationship to each other, and their characteristics. Because they have a relationship. Okay.
These are entities that he brought in?
Yeah. So when you encounter them, it's going to be all of a sudden, and it's not going to be within the benefits of the confines of a magical circle. Okay? And of course, I just got out of bed for this. So it's not when you're in your best place. I talked a lot yesterday about compassion and the role of compassion in helping people. Unfortunately, when we do that, it's really best to do it anonymously for a variety of reasons. And one of them is there's often pushback. How often in your life haven't you tried to help someone only to find that they really didn't want it? They say they do, but then you do it, and what happens? Well, I got to change. I don't change. I want everything to go just right, but I don't want to change. Well, can't we just do this instead because it's easier? No. And when you generate a lot of compassion for people, and you've probably seen this, you've probably heard it. Oh, he's just so nice. Or she's just so nice. Oh, I just hate them.
Yeah.
Haven't you heard that?
Uh-huh.
Haven't you uttered it?
Yep.
Which is why when you start reading more and more of the, literally from the Solomonic text, and I've been before that, but that's probably where they first started writing it down, you'll see many talismans geared toward, or pentacles geared toward keeping the practitioner from the end result of envy or bad influence back.
Mm-hmm.
So.
And it's simply to remind you, that that's why we wish the best for everyone. Now, a few nights ago, and by the way, before this, Jean was funny. I remember Louis saying once, he knew the seminar had to be important because there just so many obstacles were encountered. Over the last 2 weeks, it's just been amazing what I've had to deal with. And a few nights ago, I was getting out of my car, and I ran into someone that I knew. Generally, I would have just said, made pleasantries and continued about my business. But for some reason, I said, so how are things going? Which, even before it was out of my mouth, I'm saying, geez, why am I asking this? This is going to take an hour. An hour. And I mean an hour. You know the type.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter what the weather is.
No.
They'll stand there in the rain. Okay, there's got to be a reason for this. Let's see if I can figure it out. When I say a reason, we often think too much about this. We over-intellectualize it. So he began to tell me what was going on. And quickly, very quickly, we spiral into, without going into details, the relationship ills that he was involved with. And as he did this, I could see through his physical posturing, through his breathing, through his words, everything, that he was reenacting this whole thing right in front of me. And in fact, a part of me began to wonder if he actually knew I was standing there and didn't think that I was the very people that he was angry at. Mm-hmm. Because he was so involved in the process. What he quickly did is I noticed how it went, the argument went. He detailed how the argument went. I said, I get it now. I see it. We have a bunch of people who are 5, 6, 7 years old. They're stuck. They're stuck in this kind of infantile argument. That's too bad. Well, let's see. Maybe we can diffuse this a little bit. So he made some statements that were very legitimate. I said, well, that's legitimate concern. You know what I mean? I understand how you could be upset about that. Things happen. Just bulldozer. It's a machine gun. But the agreement broken for a second. He paused. Then he started up again. See, the pause is your only window of opportunity. That's why you have to create as many of them as possible and then try to interject your message. That's just a hypnotic rhythm thing, okay? But it's the same in everyday communication.
Did he ever ask you how you were?
No.
I just want to see how bad it
Dan has a shelter house.
You got a hello.
So,
Thank you.
you're welcome. You're welcome. Have some juniper.
Okay.
Pick them up. Pick them up. Juniper seeds, right? So he continued with his reenactment, and I said, you know what? I really have to try and help him here, because if he goes home like this is going to be really bad for a lot of people. You know? So I figured this has got to be probably why I just asked him. See if we could diffuse this a little. So I don't know why. I can't tell you why. But the color pink came to mind. I said, well, you know, let's just send this guy some compassion here, some altruistic, diffusing pink energy. Nice, you know, baby pink, you know, baby girl pink. And for a second, his breathing slowed down. He stopped, and he stepped back. And then he stepped forward again, even louder, even more intense. Pay attention?
Mm-hmm.
So I mirrored his body language a little bit, got him to develop a little more rapport. Listen again, make agreement. He agrees. Legitimate statement. Never agree to, well, we'll say something that's not agreeable. Now, always say something that is partially agreeable or completely, but it gets blown out of proportion. But you use that as your leverage in. So I make agreement, and I say, okay, baby blue. So, I don't know why, it just came up. Honestly. Who cares? I'm not going to analyze it. Same thing. He pauses, breathing slows down. He steps back. He comes back again, but it's a little lower. So we go back and forth like this for a while. He doesn't know what's going on. I'm not even there. He's just in his rant mode. Okay? You know what I'm talking about? You see it? I'm not even there. I just keep going with this, okay? Until he gets at least to a point where I think or hope that he can at least go home and there won't be an explosion. Can't fix it, but at least we can diffuse it. You understand?
Mm-hmm.
And very often, this is all we do. You have to be okay with that. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's like when we send out these wonderful thoughts of world peace, we see what happens. The world is still a violent, crappy place. But all we're doing is diffusing what probably would have been a lot worse. And you have to be okay with that. You're just putting out fires. That's all. And it's okay. Because if he did go home, chances are good it would have been pretty ugly. You just be okay with that. See, sometimes, again, it's not what I want for them. It's not what I want for them. It's what they're capable of achieving and what I'm capable of giving. Each to their own capacity. Remember that from yesterday? Mm-hmm. Each to their own ability. And too often we either overestimate what people are capable of or we underestimate it. We have to step back and try and just, what is really possible here? What are the real outcomes that we can get?
Let me just add something to that. So one of the practices that I learned with that was that, and it was, I've said this to several people even this weekend, but it bears repeating because it's a nice segue. It's, anytime something happens to I'm on the, the brown end of the stick, right? Is that, basically, it's just a conditioning. It's not something that's inherent in me or that I had all along. It's a conditioning constantly. Anytime I could think of it, I would put it back in and do this again. It's not the other person, it's my inability to assess where they are, what their abilities are, pluses or minuses. It has nothing to do with, they're doing this to me or they're doing that to me. I just failed to evaluate accurately what they were capable of.
You keep your power.
Yeah, it's not, it's literally, it's like, it's just, if they do something that I think is like, how the hell could they do that? It's more like, how the hell could I not see that they were only capable of this and kind of put them in a position to fail, or that they were capable of this and I only, kind of trusted them with this or whatever. It's any adverse thoughts coming my direction or that I think that it brings that up in me. It's just my inability to assess accurately where they are and what they can do or not do.
Just honest self-assessment.
Yeah.
We dramatize this. New Age, spiritual, magical, shamanic. White folk like you are nice and you're a bunch of drama queens. And you have to...
Awesome.
Yeah.
Something in the wall?
Raccoons, probably.
Do we need to get rid of it?
Nothing we can do.
There's always something we can do. Just a matter of whether it's going to smell in a few days.
Yeah, that's...
I kind of like this.
This is nice.
And it really fits the chamber well.
And what I'm saying.
It's okay.
Now, when you guys go back and you think, oh, I've got that distraction of that siren in the background or the whatever.
No, it's...
Why not 1 to 2 a.m., okay? Well,
They have to pay. Just as you're evoking you have to assess its capabilities.
So up here, guys. So with the drama, there's a tendency to use a lot of language that doesn't really accurately describe what's going on. And we like labels because they're the way they sound. And we have to, at some point, free ourselves of those labels. That doesn't mean we ditch them completely with others. It's part of the tradition. When you're teaching, you teach certain things. But then at some point you say, you know what? This is simply about my failure to adequately assess the situation. That's all it is. Whether it was a plumbing error, or whether it was a business error, or whether it was what was going on in the relationship. It's just, okay. How did I come into it with, and what did I leave it with? That's it. So we have to make sure that we I don't like that you own it, but you just take responsibility for what's going on. Because clearly the other person, they can't. If they could, they wouldn't be in that relationship with you of asking you to fix X, Y, Z. You understand?
Yes.
So, amongst ourselves, we have to be very clear in our language and discussion. We save the flowery rhetoric for prayers and invocations. Now, one of the things that... let's pass those nails around. Everybody takes them. Nice iron things. They're great. Make yourself a nice... They have something that are called witch balls. Now, witch balls are of two kinds. I've seen them where they're wonderful glass balls that are filled in the same way, or sometimes they're glass balls that are reflective. There seem to be two different definitions of this. One is very similar to what we have here, and along with that, I've heard the idea of it kind of like... someone said to me once, all they are is really just... They're They're just for the dog and pony show. We hang them in the room because they look nice and people think something of them. Now they're spirit balls. Whether that's true or not, one of the other definitions is of a malignant entity. Specifically a malignant thought form sent by someone else, specifically and intentionally. And these balls, if you see them, are just that. They're like these nasty kind of spheres of everything negative. Sharp and coarse and brittle and all things unnice, because that's not what the person was thinking of when they were thinking of you, or that other person. I'm sure they can probably manifest kind of spontaneously just through environment of collective people doing it unconsciously. I have no doubt about that. And I encountered one many years ago that was with me. At some point, I experienced it on a very long road trip. It was a 3,000-mile round trip where I had to make a delivery down to Miami. And it was quite fascinating when it finally revealed itself, because the psychological state that you're in as this is going on is, time and space are very much distorted. And this was not just the effect of driving. This had happened before I had undertaken the trip. And I was actually glad to go on the trip because I knew something was really pretty wrong. Something was very wrong. And I probably didn't eat for about 10 days. And it didn't bother me at all. I had very little sleep for about that same period. It didn't really bother me at all. But the neurotic anxiety of an undifferentiated anxiety was a dominant theme. And then one night, it was in the hotel that I stayed in halfway back. I saw this thing. I get it now. Okay. Question was, where is it coming from? Why? I never figured that out. I never found out. Okay? I was just able to diffuse it and move on. And it's a fairly unpleasant experience. I'm not telling you this because it's war stories. This is a very unpleasant experience, and many of you have been experiencing that kind of undifferentiated anxiety lately. A lot of other people have as well. I find out they're just anxious. And when this kind of coalesces, it takes shape and form. Yes.
Can I ask you a question about that? When you're in it, sometimes it's hard to get into your toolbox and figure out which thing would be the best to diffuse it, because you have to first identify that it's not you, that it's coming from outside of you. So do you have any special technique for diffusing it when you're in that state of anxiety? One above the other?
No, you just have to cut the anxiety down before it arises, because it comes and goes in waves. It's like normal life, only intensified. See, it's not a special experience. It's a daily experience that you have, but your anxiety goes like that. Now the anxiety is amplified, expanded. So you have to cut it down before it arises, before it envelopes you. And it's not easy. That's the point. It's not easy. If it were easy, we wouldn't be here. But we practice it, and the way you do it is in daily life. You don't let your neurotic tendencies overrun you. You don't gossip. Word. Don't gossip. Don't criticize. Don't be nitpicky, complaining. You have to have a positive attitude about things. And you find them positive. Focus positively on yourself, not negatively. and focus positively on others. We encourage their strengths rather than pointing out their weaknesses. Sure, if there's a personal relationship, as I've talked to you about, different skill sets you may have. If you're undertaking a practice, you say, you want your teacher to say, really, you've got, the portrait's beautiful, but you need to fix the nose. Or you got part of it just right, but now you just need to do that. Just that. That'll make it just right. Well, that's part of it. Or if we're writing out the talisman here, I say, no, that's not that letter, that's this one. That's part of helping. Constructive critique, constructive. So before we say anything, we ask ourselves, what good does this do? Who does this benefit? In many ways, when I have to do an analysis of very unpleasant things, to find out why things are going on, I have to ask that too. Okay, who benefits from this? Someone's getting a payoff somewhere. What is that payoff? Who is it? How do they get it? But for us, we're not dealing with that. We're dealing with just being kinder and being gentler and being nicer to one another. Being gentler, more refined. Being gentlemen and gentlewomen. You don't want to be coarse and rough all the time. It can be fun. You know that. Advantages, right? But not all the time. Paracelsus was wonderful, but that was one of his downfalls. He was simply never able to overcome that in his dealings with people.
Maybe that's because we don't get a lot of sleep doing this one.
Could be. Could be. And of course, you want to kind of smooth out the edges. Yeah. Symbolism of the Masonic ash. The rough stone made smooth. The rough ash into the smooth ash.
So with all the anxiety of the coming of the end, this chaos that's going on and around us, not necessarily with us. I mean, I don't feel it's with that I'm experiencing, but I see a lot of it. This, oh my God, the 20 it's coming up, and my calendar's over. How do we help that be diffused? I mean, obviously in ourselves.
What are you afraid of? You just asked them direct. What are you afraid of? The world's going to end. No, it won't. The world will still be here. It won't explode. Even if a coronal mass envelopes us, raises the temperature to 220 degrees, and all human life disappears, the world will still be here. Oh, but you won't. So what are you afraid of? Well, yeah.
Anyway.
But that's the point. Well, yeah. I mean, when did you expect that not to happen? When did you expect that not to happen? I'm a little pointed about it, because some people often don't. They're just so good at avoiding the question, you got to nail them down with it.
Yeah.
When did you expect not to die? Okay. Then we get to the real question. Why are the opposite is what's the payoff? You have other people who are preparing for all sorts of things. And I'm a firm believer in being prepared, being a Boy Scout. No reason any of you should not have ample supplies of food and water filtration available, medical supplies to you, because if this were 100 years ago, that would have been normal. If it were 70 years ago in many places in the country, it would have been normal. Only now because we have just in time. Drops out of the sky to us magically from the 7,000-mile supply chain from China. We think that that's normal. That it's normal to get up on a Sunday and go down to the grocery store and get what we want to eat. I remember blue laws. What? We have to wait till after. Have to wait till afternoon, I think it was, till midday in order to get on our bikes and ride over to the grocery, not to the drugstore. I think it was limited to drugstores, gas stations. Most of them were privately owned, so they weren't open. And I think grocery stores were the only things allowed to be open.
After a certain.
Well, they were considered essential businesses.
Right.
Yeah.
After church.
I remember that.
After church, right. And we've come to expect this notion of whatever I want, whenever I want it. And that's okay, as long as you realize that's not a permanent state. And that can change. Now, many of you have had friends or relatives who've been affected by the recent storm. It hit the East Coast, New Jersey and New York and that area. Many people did not prepare. Many people, even though they had weeks of warning, many people didn't believe it would be that bad. Many people thought, I live in a floodplain, but why do I have to put anything above 3 feet? Or why do it at all? Many people didn't do anything except wait to become a victim and then complain. Now, we don't want to admit to that because that's not a good story.
It doesn't get any money from FEMA.
It doesn't get FEMA. But if you think the federal government's going to come to your aid, you're out of your mind.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's not really their job. I mean, it's like the police department. The police department's job is not to protect you. It is to protect the community. You are not the community. You know? The Supreme Court said that. You can't sue the police department for not showing up to your house when it's getting burglarized in the middle of a riot. Their job is the common good. So this is part of growing up, is taking responsibility for yourself. And as you do that, then you're able to help others. Because you've got something to help them with, not just something internally, but then something tangibly as well. You know, no reason for you not to have 3 months of food in your house. I've worked in stores. I've worked in things. Supply chains are dry. They're like that. But if you have a disruption of a week or two, which I've seen, you're okay. But your neighbors aren't. So that's what people are afraid of. They're afraid of they know that their life hangs on a thread on all levels, and they're terrified of it because they haven't thought about anything else. They've not given any conscious thought to their mortality or to their immortality. It's all just sensory stuff. Not that there's anything wrong with sensory stuff. We're part of it. But it's just that, and they don't know what else to do, and they feel trapped. So you got a lot of people who are prepping because they know that the world is basically decadent. And they're waiting for it to end so that they can establish their version of heaven on earth and whatever that utopia is going to be. You have others who just simply hate their jobs or their lives or whatever it is, and they're too cowardly to do something different.
So they want to end.
So when the boundaries that break down around them, because they can't break through them, then they can go kill zombies or something like that. Or whatever they think they're going to do. I don't know what they think they're going to do. Or be the new Messiah.
That would be your fellow workers.
Yeah. But all this is neurotic. All this is pathological. You know? And it all comes down to simply not wanting to be responsible for myself and responsible to others. That's all it comes down to. Not accepting that, life is short. How short? Well, do the math. As I've said to many of you, come on, let's do the math here. Stop screwing around. And then, what are you worried about? Yeah, we got bills to pay. We all have bills to pay. You know, and the payoff is, again, when you're looking at people with this 2012 thing and this neurotic behavior, it all comes down to, I'm afraid to take responsibility for my life. I'm afraid to act like a big boy. I'm afraid to act like a big girl. You know, and that fear, that need for safety, that need for external confirmation, you know, is crippling. It's crippling. You know, and all of these things may happen. I mean, the world is simply a changing place. It's unstable. We don't know what will happen from time to next. You know, and these prophecies may or may not come true. But it doesn't change the fact that I have to be responsible for my life and make plans. So, you know, what they want to do is they want to guarantee. Mm-hmm. Please tell me what will happen so I can plan accordingly. Mm-hmm. Can't tell you what will happen so you can plan accordingly. Here, I'm going to tell you what will happen so you can plan accordingly. You're going to die. Doesn't matter how much you own or how much you owe, you're going to die. So figure out what you're going to do between now and then, because it can come at any time. Here, that's what's going to happen. Okay?
That way you only have to memorize one speech.
Right. and you know, we can dress that up. We can dress that up and polish it as much as we want. But it's the same thing. We can polish it as much as we want, but it's the same thing. Some people respond to that nicely. Some people respond to it not so nicely. But that's really what we're getting at. It's really what we're getting at. Because behind the 2012 stuff is a whole bunch of idea of, you know, it's spiritual welfare. Daddy's going to save us, Sky God or Sky Daddy or Earth Mommy here. And then we're going to all get along and sing Kumbaya. And pass the talking stick and the rattle. It's so perfectly infantile symbolism of the whole neurotic thought process. Really.
It's the other end of the spectrum of the neurotic.
It won't, you know, no, it won't happen. And because these states are states of mind. Now, there are prophecies and predictions that are very unpleasant and may continue to unfold that way. However, that's not the point. Whether it's the second coming of Jesus, whether it's the first or whatever, multiple comings of the Messiah, whether it's the 13th Iman, or whether it's the Maitreya Buddha in 400 years, or whatever, at the end of the Kali Yuga, you know, the story's all the same. And the point of the story at the end of time, so to speak, is that each and every one of us has to be responsible right now for what we do.
Right. For what we do right now.
What we do right now. That's it. And if you can open yourself up courageously to the reality of the unstable environment in which you live, and the fact that it is unsafe, and that it is unstable, and that you're the only one who can take care of yourself or ensure your salvation, then you're well on your way to adulthood. You know, and to step into wonderfully politically incorrect land here just for the sake of a grand illustration. And, you know, when we illustrate points, we always go to extremes, too. That's the point why, because it's so dramatic. It's black on white, or white on black, whatever. But, you know, as many of you know, I occasionally teach in the university level. And, you know, trying to explain to young men and young women that, you know, people perceive you based upon how you dress is very difficult, you know. So, but I should be able to do whatever I want. I say, yes, you can. You can do whatever you want. You can do exactly whatever you want. Anything. That's okay. You just have to take responsibility for it. And realize that if you're coming in for a job, okay, an interview, okay, and you've got more tattoos than clothes, that limits your possibility for employment. You just have to be okay with that. So what do you mean? I said, well, you've gotten all the lectures on multiculturalism, right? I said, oh yeah. I said, well, guess what? There was a time when the only people who wore tattoos were gangsters, whores, and mercenaries, and slaves. So I have to ask myself, if I hire you, am I going to put you with my Japanese clients where the guys who they have wear tattoos are either prostitutes or gangsters? I'm just being inclusive here. I'm not being judgmental. I just got to wonder how, since they're paying the bills, how they're going to react. And then they say, oh, okay. And then it goes down to other things. Said, how you present yourself, again, is an unconscious image of what you value, presented to the world. On the other hand, many of us present ourselves, of course, when you go to a business meeting, you dress in a particular way because you are making a conscious decision of how you present yourself to the world. When you dress up for ritual, you're making a conscious effort of how you present yourself to the invisible world, to the universe. Do you understand?
Yes.
Okay? Good. So I'm okay with what you do. So the one girl, I said, look, that's great, but you want to walk down that street at 2 a.m. dressed like that? I said, that's fine. Just understand. You will be solicited. She goes, what? I said, men will ask to pay you for sex. I said, you also run the risk in this neighborhood of becoming a victim. I said, so you can do that if you want, but understand, that's not the place to do it, nor at that time. But I should be able to do whatever. You can do whatever you want. Just understand, other people are going to be reacting to that, and they're going to see you differently. And they will see you according to how you present yourself at times and places. It's very complex. It's far more complex than you realize. I said, if you were in a club, that'd be great. You'd have a damn of it. But not there. I know it's only 2 blocks over. Trust me. There is a line. You've just crossed from one world into the next, and you don't even know it. You don't live here. You're just a visitor. And that's the way it is in our psychic environments, too. We don't live there. We're just visitors. And we're crossing from one world into the next.
That's a really good analogy.
Yeah. And we've got to make sure that we're kind of dressed appropriately.
So we can play.
Yeah. And that dress is,
So we can survive.
yeah, our thought, our word, our deed.
Yeah.
Being positive.
I mean, the thing is, like with these beings, you can't out-combat them.
No.
Because you cannot express more anger than they are. And if you do,
They feed up.
that means you're higher on the hierarchy.
Oh, they don't like it.
Remember remember what I said about that I read that little quote yesterday about the human that becomes the demon. Okay? Same how does human become a god?
But you can out compassion.
Right, because then there's no room. There's no room for it. They don't like the music in the room. They don't like the music in the room. They don't like it. So they just leave.